What do studio executives and producers say about story structure? Or do they not? Is it just, this isn't working here? Or do they narrow it down?
I think it depends. I mean, every studio is so different now, and the studios have honestly, they've changed so much since when I started off. Like I said, a lot of them, are run by business people with no creative background at all. So, they're, what I'm saying, like they're relying on their creative team. And that's not every studio by any means, but it has gotten a lot more business oriented. So I've been in a lot of meetings where it's like, this isn't working for me. I don't know why, but it's just not. And they don't know. They just know that they don't like it, and so then you have to like try to fish around to kind of figure out what they don't like about it, or what's not working for them. And a lot of times it's just a very interesting business because you meet so many interesting types, and you meet some really great, smart, creative people, but you also meet some people who got their jobs, and then you're like, how is this person like working? I don't understand because they obviously know nothing about film. And I'm not even saying that, like, some of it's like sometimes ridiculous where they'll say, well, can you make all the people 13? It's like, well, they're carrying machine guns and machetes and fighting monsters, so that might look a little ridiculous with the 13-year-old with a machine gun. Like, well, just try it. So a lot of times you'll get notes like that, or they'll give you a really crazy note that will derail your, like, I don't think a lot of people understand, like, you do knit a screenplay together. So if you pull a string out over here, it does have an effect in other places. So a lot of times they'll be like, well, just, the producer's sister wants a part, so just give that girl a best friend and just put her in one scene. I'm like, well, then it wouldn't be her best friend if she's only in one scene. But then that affects all this other stuff, and we'll just make it work. So you'll get that a lot of times where it's like, they'll give you like a really crazy note. So what I've learned to do over the many, many years now, is you have to be a little passive aggressive with them, and because they do, at the end of the day, everybody working in the business at least wants to be heard, and you try to, again, decipher what their note means. If their note sounds stupid, like if they're saying, well, if they're just telling you to put somebody's friend in the movie, that's not a creative note. But if they're like, well, we think there just needs to be a cat, I want a cat here, and you try to think, well, why do they feel it's so important to have a cat here? And then it's like, well, okay, maybe there's like some emotion that's missing here, or there's like, because when you see a cat, it just gives you the warm fuzzies. That maybe there's something that's missing in this scene that they want. So a lot of times if you go back to them and you say, well, you said you wanted a cat here, but what I think you were going for was that you're not feeling this and this and this. And they're like, yeah, that's what I mean. So a lot of it is kind of deciphering what they say. But as far as structure itself goes, I mean, they'll know structure a lot of times, but a lot of times it's like, it's committee stuff. So, they'll have a reader cover a script first. So if the reader doesn't like it, then a lot of times it won't even go to a development executive or creative executive. Creative executive likes it, they'll give it to somebody higher up. If somebody else higher up likes it, they'll put it on their weekend read, which means that all the executive team will read it, and that's still a roll of the dice if they're going to like, So it's a tough business, but the great thing is there's so many other companies out there besides the major studios that you can go. That's why I always tell people to focus on, because getting into the studio is just really hard, because it's a machine now, and so they're all putting out remakes and sequels and things based on comic books and video games, and so all their original content goes to their, if Chris Nolan wants to make Inception, yes, they will give him money, but then they're like, well, our slot's full, we've got all of the Marvel movies coming out for 5 years now, and one movie that's not a Marvel movie, so yeah, they don't care so much about structure. It's more of a business model, I think, a lot with the studios. So you learn that, and that helps you take your ego out of a lot of stuff, so you don't take it personally, because it really is a business. I think they do care more about business models than they do script structure.
Do you know when that changed? I mean, I realize you probably can't say, yes, it was 2001 on this date. But...
No, I mean, I think it started to change in the 90s, I think it started changing in because when I started working at New Line, it was in the early 90s. And it was those, I think, 60s was very, that's a lot of times when, 60s, 70s, I think a lot of that was creative. But I think in the 90s, I think when a lot of the corporations started wanting to be in the movie business. So then you had Ted Turner buying the studio, and then, Warner Brothers buying the studio, and then everything just started turning into big corporations. And, then when you're, this is no offense to business people, but when you're business minded, that's all you think about is your bottom line. It's like, well, how can I tick off as many boxes to make sure this movie has the widest appeal, as opposed to if I make this really good movie, even though I don't get it at all, you know, I'm going to take a chance on it because I trust that there will be enough people that will watch it. Like, that's why I love New Line Cinema, you know, because Bob Shea really fostered that. It was very maverick, you know, thinking back then. And Mike DeLuca was really one of the best development executives I think that ever worked at a studio. I mean, he was, you know, he would do a movie and, you know, like a movie like Blade, they'd be like, who wants to see a black vampire slayer? Well, a lot of people, you know, who wants to see a movie about a guy that puts on a mask and he's, you know, can do all this great, who wants to see him, you know, like about these two really dumb guys, you know, like he would really champion all these movies that most studios would never, ever take a chance on, but he got it. He's like, no, you have to trust me on this. Like, people will go see these movies. And you don't see that fearlessness much anymore in studios. And that's just, they just like to play it safe, and that's, again, you can just see it from their slates. That's why they're remaking remakes now, and you know, the thinking is, well, if people know the title, then that gives us a leg up over an original film, so it's a safer business proposition. So it's kind of, that's why a lot of people are going to TV now, is because that's where you can go and be creative, and you know, they're spending almost as much on TV stuff as they're spending on movies now, and you can have really great creative storytelling and not be like stifled.
So back when you were at New Line, do you remember that people would know sort of character arc, and it was much more about the craft of writing, that they could understand and dissect certain parts and why they didn't like it? Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I think in the development meetings there's definitely, like, there was stuff that the notes were definitely much more like, this isn't working because of, it's not, the creative stuff isn't being satisfied in it. Whereas later on it was just like, I don't like it, or there's not a big actor attached, or I can't make a toy out of it. But you know, even New Line, they started a division called Fine Line that was more for their art house films that didn't, you know, fit the traditional blockbuster, you know, structure, or you know, would probably win an Academy Award, but would probably not make a lot of money. So they created a division especially to let, like, auteur filmmakers do their thing, you know, without having to worry about, is this going to make $100 million at the box office or not? So, yeah, that was part of just a film lover kind of company, like creating like an offshoot to make like kind of artsy films that most people would read the scripts and be like, what is this? Helen Hunt with a piano and her daughter sitting in the middle of nowhere? Well, that doesn't make any sense. So,
do you remember the first movie you saw in the theater?
I don't actually, which is really, really weird. I remember seeing Nightmare on Elm Street in '84.
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. When you were there, sorry to interrupt, but did you think, okay, were you already thinking of writing this other script?
No, I just thought this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. Because it was a double feature. It was like Alone in the Dark, which New Line put out as well, which was a slasher movie about some escaped mental patients who get out during a storm one night. Jack Palance was in it and terrorized like a town in this house. And so Nightmare on Elm Street was the second movie after that. So the first one was scary, but it was, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, especially when you're 14, it was just brilliant. Like, I was like, what the hell is this movie? So it just kind of blew my mind. So it is funny. I remember seeing like Salem's Lot on TV, but it is funny as far as movie theaters go. For some reason, my brain is just, oh no, I do remember. This isn't the first one I saw. This is awful, but they used to do these movies, and they were rated R movies, but they were stupid, like Pom Pom Girls or something, some cheerleaders. So my cousins and my mom, of all people, my mom was a little bit of a hippie. They would take us to the drive-in and they would sneak us in, but they would make us turn our backs to the screen during any nudity stuff. But we'd sit with like a little picnic. I don't remember the name of the movie. It was something in the Pom Pom Girls or some cheerleaders. I think that was the first drive-in movie I remember seeing. But I remember me and my sister spent most of our time with our back to the screen, eating popcorn and hot dogs and stuff. But yeah, I remember that because they had to sneak us in the theater under
nice,
like a good old hippie living.